Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're exploring a seriously ambitious framework known as the Personas of Arithmetic. It asks a pretty wild question. What if your everyday intuitive sense of right and wrong is actually an uncompromising arithmetic function? Let's get into it. Now, what's so fascinating here is how this framework bridges our messy, unpredictable human experience with the absolute rigid laws of pure math. It takes these incredibly abstract concepts like infinite topologies and frames them as the literal, invisible constitution of reality. Basically, reality relies on a systemic framework where only the elements chosen by a supreme mathematical filter are actually permitted to exist. But how does all that cosmic math connect to you and me and our daily moral compass? Well, that brings us right to the core of our focus today, Persona 5. It states, very simply, we judge whether each set is good. Up to this point in the axiomatic progression, reality was just pure geometry, just unbounded topological expansion. But without a system of evaluation, existence is just sort of static. Persona 5 is what gives the cosmos its moral pulse. Think of a coffee filter, right? It catches the bitter grounds but lets the good stuff flow right through. In mathematical logic, a filter does exactly that, but with truth. So the absolute crucial point here is that in this framework, you are functioning as a literal mathematical filter every single time you decide right from wrong. Because you're the one deciding what propositions are true when you make a judgment, you're structurally enforcing logic upon reality itself. It's huge. And here is exactly where the math beautifully collides with ancient theology. The source text correlates this filtering process directly with the Christian doctrine of the imago Dei, or the image of God. Because we humans are endowed with rational faculties and a moral conscience, we're actively participating in the evaluation of these mathematical subsets. We are literally tasked with weighing the ethical and spiritual impact of actions, beliefs, and massive structural systems. In the philosophy of language, humanity actually fulfills this persona by constantly acting as a common law judge. Just think about prophets, clerics, scholars, and theologians across all world religions. They are continually performing rational reconstructions of ancient scriptures. Look at the Talmudic tradition in Judaism, for example. It operates on this juridical model where opposed positions are reasonably and heavily debated. It's this ongoing process of taking messy, subjective, historical contingency and giving it the form of objective necessity. We're constantly striving to figure out which sets of actions actually align with the divine will. All right, let's move on to the next axiom and see how this builds, because suddenly the math pulls the rug right out from under our finite human courts. Axiom 6 flat out declares, no finite judgments matter. Wow. So despite our profound capacity for judgment that we just established in Persona 5, the arithmetic personas introduce a harsh but completely necessary metaphysical truth here. Here's the deal. Mathematics doesn't care about your finite court case, our mortal opinions, our human heuristics, our societal norms. They are strictly bounded by time and ignorance. They completely lack the transfinite scope required to genuinely balance the eternal calculus. The text actually brings in Arrow's impossibility theorem, which proves mathematically that perfect voting systems are impossible, to show that relying strictly on finite judgments will always fail to capture the overarching invisible constitution of reality. Any finite system is eventually going to collapse into contradictions. It's inevitable. So, if our local, finite judgments don't actually matter in the grand scheme of things, this next axiom forces us to zoom way out, to the multiverse, to see where the real evaluation is happening. Axiom 7 states that judgments take place across all realities. This tells us that the true evaluation of goodness isn't confined to some localized, finite domain. No, it is expanded to absolute cosmic proportions. This means our individual judgments are actually sprawling across an awe-inspiring, transfinite topological space far, far beyond human perception. The text refers to this space as the stone check compactification. Basically, think of it as a sprawling, infinite map that completely fills in every possible gap in reality. When we evaluate whether a belief system or a moral framework is good, we are effectively navigating the complex branches of this infinite mathematical space. And get this, if a human judgment fails to align with the ultimate transfinite intersections of reality, it's mathematically relegated to a measure of zero. It is effectively voided entirely. And right here is where we reach the cosmic singularity. It's the mathematical equivalent of the equal sign that perfectly balances reality. Axiom 8 proclaims there is only one judge. Now, while Eastern traditions might frame this ultimate judgment as an impersonal, mechanical law, something like karma, the Abrahamic faiths personify this evaluative force into a singular, supreme, divine judge. While we are burdened with judgment locally, like we saw in Persona 5, Islamic theology provides a perfect parallel for this new cosmic singularity in Persona 8. The absolute singularity of God is known as Tawheed, and one of God's definitive attributes is Al-Hakam, the judge, or the arbitrator. Al-Hakam executes pure justice, not based on flawed, messy human perspectives, but on the infinite axioms of divine wisdom. Mathematically speaking, this singular divine entity operates as the supreme ultrafilter. That's a maximal filter that enforces a final, absolute judgment on every possible subset of the universe. Now, this brings us to a profound philosophical mystery that the text beautifully unpacks. Think about it. If the overarching mathematical reality of Persona 8 says there is strictly only one absolute judge, but Persona 5 demands that we are the conscious agents doing the judging, how on earth do we reconcile this? How can our finite, messy human evaluation coexist with a totally dictatorial mathematical singularity? Well, look at how this logically and inevitably builds across the interface of these four personas. We begin with the individual evaluating a single action. Then our finite agency is mathematically voided. From there, those judgments are swept up and expanded across the transfinite topological space of all realities. And finally, all of that sprawling chaotic complexity converges into a single supreme limit point. It's a universal singularity that completely eclipses finite agency to secure the infallible goodness of the whole. So here is the absolute mind-bending conclusion to all of this. You and the divine arbitrator are part of the exact same mathematical fabric. Drawing heavily on the analytical psychology of Carl Jung and the Hindu teaching of Brahma Atman, the text suggests that the collective unconscious acts as a structural perfection. In this transfinite mathematical reality, the individual is totally absorbed into the overarching totality. Our individual consciousnesses, our finite acts of judging what is good, are really just different points on the exact same cosmic ultrafilter. We are effectively all the exact same soul looking through different finite lenses within the construction. Isn't that wild? And because we are all viewing the same pre-existing structure, a later axiom, Persona 15, boldly claims that development is an illusion. Because this singular ultrafilter, this invisible constitution of reality, is infinite and absolute right from the point of origin, all judgments have technically already been rendered across all realities. The final docket of judgments in that transfinite space is fixed, done. What we perceive as time, history, and moral development, that's really just the human or computational process of discovering these pre-existing mathematical truths. It's basically a form of mathematical Gnosticism that completely reframes our entire place in the universe, merging highly advanced set theory with ancient theological truths. So, if there's ultimately only one singular judge balancing the cosmic equation, and yet the axioms absolutely demand that we are the ones doing the judging at the local level, whose eyes are you looking through right now? I want to leave you with that mind-bending thought as you go about making your everyday judgments. Thank you so much for joining this explainer.